Today we are going to be making wind socks. You're going to get a piece of paper that looks like this with 2 holes punched in it. You're going to get 3 streamers that look like this and a piece of yarn. You're going to turn this into a cylinder like this. Now, you can try using glue, but I think stapling it will be better. There, I stapled it. Before you staple it, put it together to make it look like a cylinder, you can decorate it any way you want. You can draw, color, you can do anything you want to make your windsock look a certain way. The next thing you're going to do is glue on streamers. Let me show you. I glued the 3 streamers to the inside. You can see down in the windsock. I glued them to the inside just so it looks nicer. You can glue it to the outside, but then you'll see the ends. It looks so much nicer when you have the strings dangling like this, the streamers. On the top of the windsock, where these holes are, you're going to put a piece of string to hang it. I basically strung the string right through the 2 holes, and I made a knot at the top. So it's like a handle, like this. So now my windsock looks like this. This is a windsock. What do you think a windsock could be used for? What does a windsock tell us about the wind? That is our question today. That's our focus question. A windsock is used at airports to tell which direction the wind is blowing and how hard it's blowing. We're going to test the windsock that I made now. I'm holding it out in front of me. Take a look. Oh, there it goes. Do you see the way the streamers are blowing? Can you tell which way the wind is coming from by the direction that the streamers are blowing? Waiting for some wind. Today is not that windy a day. Look at the direction that the streamers are blowing. The wind pushes the streamers in the direction that the wind is blowing. The wind is blowing toward me now. Do you see how the streamers are being pushed out by the wind? Whichever way the streamers are pointing, the bottom of the streamers are going to blow out and point in the direction of the wind. The wind will push the streamers. There it goes. The wind is pushing the streamers. The way the streamers are pointing, that's the way the wind is blowing. Do you see? The wind pushes the streamers. So now I know the wind is blowing to the west because the streamers were pointing to the west that way. That is how a windsock is used. When you put your windsock together, you can test it out and see if you can figure out which way the wind is blowing. We're going to read a bit from our big book. This portion is called Weather. It says, weather is in the air. Sometimes the weather is hot. Sometimes the weather is cold. Who is dressed for hot weather? Who is dressed for cold weather? Sometimes the weather is wet. Sometimes the weather is dry. Who is ready for wet weather? Who is ready for dry weather? Sometimes the weather is windy. Sometimes the weather is calm. Factories make steam. Which factory shows a windy day? Which factory shows a calm day? Does it look a little like our windsock, where the wind is pushing the steam that way because the wind is blowing? It looked a little bit like what we saw with our windsock, didn't it? We recognize this. Do you remember what it was called? It says, people use tools to measure weather. Hot and cold weather can be measured with a Thermometer. Did you remember the word? Thermometer. Wet weather can be measured with a rain gauge. See what they're doing? This is a close-up of it. This is a rain gauge. And it measures, the water fills it up and shows 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, almost like a ruler, but it's like a cup that measures the rain outside. And here's the tool we use today. Wind direction can be measured with a windsock. So this is, the wind gathers in here and blows it out that way. Trees are in the weather all the time. Trees live in hot and cold weather. Trees stay calm or they move in the wind. What kind of weather is happening here? How can you tell? Do you see some of the branches down? What's happening to the trees? Does it look a little like our windsock? It's being pushed out. Scientists use tools to measure the weather. They tell us what the weather is today. They can forecast what the weather might be tomorrow. We do that, right? We look up our forecast to see what temperature it's going to be. A weather forecast can help us prepare for a rainstorm. We might decide to stay indoors. We might plan to go out wearing a raincoat and boots. A forecast can help us prepare for a snowstorm. Can you expect this kind of weather where you live? Can we expect it to sometimes look like this? Yes, we can. Weather is in the air. You feel and see the weather every day. So go outside, enjoy the weather. It might change tomorrow. And that's the end of the article in the book that we're going to read. Now we learned a little bit about wind and saw in the book. What would we call a day where there is little wind or no wind? We would call that calm, a calm day. What about if there's a little bit of wind but not a lot of wind? We would call that type of day breezy. What if it's a lot of wind? Then we're going to call it windy. The windsock can help us see whether it was a calm, breezy, or windy day. What would you say the day that I just measured outside was? I would say that it was calm. It took a while to find a breeze to move our windsock. It's a calm day at my house outside today. What about you? When you put your windsock together, go outside and see what kind of day it is, and if you can get the windsock to tell you what direction the wind is blowing. Think about the article that we just read in the book. What changes do we see when the weather changes? Do we see the clouds change? Sometimes. Do we see the sun come out or go in? Absolutely. What else? Sometimes the temperature will change. It will get hotter or cooler. When it rains, everything gets wet. Sometimes when it rains, there might be wind and things might blow around as well. Do you remember what tools we use to measure the weather? They talked about, in the article, they talked about a thermometer. What does that measure? That measures how hot or cold the weather is. They talked about a rain gauge that would measure how much rain we get. And they talked about a windsock, which measures the direction of the wind and how fast the wind is blowing. Let's review some of the other weather questions. Where is weather? Weather is in the air. Why are weather forecasts important to people? They can plan for activities. They can prepare for severe weather. Do you think the weather we're having today is the same weather that people all over New Jersey are having? How about all over the country? No. Different places have different weather. Sometimes even as close as your town, Washington Township, and my town, Closter, we can have different weather. Sometimes it will be raining or snowing in one of the towns and not in the other. Certainly, as we travel farther away, they may be having different weather. Different regions have different kinds of weather. In the book, they talked about preparing for certain weather. What kind of weather do we have to prepare for? What about a big snowstorm? How can we prepare? We can make sure that our shovels are ready where we can get them, our clothes like our boots and our gloves, that we have them handy. We can also make sure that we have salt, maybe to salt down our sidewalks when they get icy. There are lots of ways that we prepare. Places that have lots of hurricanes like Florida, they have special shutters to cover their windows to prepare for hurricanes. Sometimes they board up their windows so that the big winds don't break their windows. There are lots of ways we can prepare for weather. A windsock helps us to do that by measuring how fast the wind is blowing and which direction it's coming from. What I'd like you to do is make your own windsock using the materials I gave you and test it outside. See if you can tell what direction the wind is blowing and how fast it's blowing. Please make a note in your science notebook about something you learned today. Have a great day.